Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Andrew, and as you can see on the bed behind me, that is my cat Shadow. I'm back, I should say. I should start with the obvious. I'm back now, more actively on YouTube again. I'm going to talk about that and what happened later on, because I have an interesting story all about that, how plans were made. I basically had to look after my grandfather, and well, it didn't quite go the way we all thought it was going to. But that's the story for later. I was just originally going to jump into my next series. However, a couple of things, I came across a couple of things in the news, and I kind of wanted to talk about them, and I have this story that I want to share. So instead, I thought I would start with a Coffee Thoughts episode. Now, I have my big mug of coffee here. So grab a cup and grab a drink. Come join us. Or come join me, I should say. Well, us. My cat's here too. I doubt he's going to stay. He's had a long nap already. He seems to be waking up a little bit now, but we'll see. Sometimes he does this and just goes right back to bed, so we'll have to see. But I will have timestamps in the description below if you want to jump around, depending on what you want to hear or not. But let's get started. So first, an Ontario court has ruled, and there he goes. An Ontario court has ruled against Dr. Jordan Peterson, basically upholding the College of Psychologists order for social media training. Now, if you don't know what this is about, I have a whole video talking about this. I'll put it in the description below. And just a short idea of what happened. The College of Psychologists is basically an oversight committee. And Dr. Jordan Peterson made some comments on Twitter and on certain podcasts that, in my opinion, they just disagreed with, didn't like him saying it, and now are trying to punish him for them. They deemed that he could no longer practice psychology unless he completed what they've deemed as social media training for an indefinite amount of time, and he has to pay for it. So I think I talk more about it in that video if you want to actually check that out. Again, that link is in the description below. I go into the context of what he actually said in his comments and why I don't think they should be punishing him for this. Now, I'm not surprised at this ruling. Because this is an oversight committee within the College of Psychologists, there's really not a lot that Peterson could do when it comes to getting a court to change it. Basically, he had to go in, and the court could only review what they've deemed as what the college has deemed appropriate, and they have to decide, the judge had to decide whether or not that was a reasonable thing for the college to deem appropriate. That's the only way Jordan Peterson could challenge this. So it really did not come down to his, freedom of speech rights here in Canada. And I don't think he's surprised, and I don't think anyone's surprised that the judge deemed that this was appropriate. And he did mention the fact that this was kind of balancing between Jordan Peterson's right to free speech and the fact that it was reasonable for the college to order this. The judge didn't even feel like this training was a punishment. I would disagree with that judge on that, just because he is being forced to pay for this training, which will not be cheap. Also, on top of that, he's doing it for an indefinite amount of time until they deem him ready to be back on social media. So that's to me, it seems like a punishment to me. Now, what's most important about this, in my opinion, is the fact that this is happening. I'm glad that this is coming to light, but because this is such a big case, it got covered. But this is happening with a lot of these oversight boards for these professions that have them. And just a few examples of that: doctors, nurses, teachers, lawyers, psychiatrists, and so on. Unfortunately, this is happening in all of those fields where, if, just to give an example, if a teacher has opinions that are different than what the College of Teachers thinks is appropriate, they are being punished for that opinion. Again, big issue with freedom of speech. I am a huge freedom of speech advocate, and I think whenever I've seen anything, although most of those aren't even covered because they're not a big enough case to be covered, it's just been basically, well, their opinion, I don't agree with their opinion, so they should have to shut up, is basically what the College of Psychologists in this case, or in other cases that I've seen, are saying. I've also seen videos, and to me this is worrisome, but I've also seen videos that either people have claimed to talk to lawyers, or the lawyer themselves is talking about it. However, their identity has to be hidden, because if the lawyer does talk about this, they could be punished by their own oversight committee. But lawyers are basically saying that there are certain strategies that they can use, certain questions they could ask, that are completely legal and valid in court, and would help their clients potentially win their case. However, because their oversight board does not like those types of questions, they can actually be punished if they ask them in court. And to me, that's ridiculous. If they're completely legal to ask, if they are going to help my client, if I was a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, but if I was, I would want to ask those questions. But apparently they're kind of handcuffed and not allowed to because, well, the oversight board decided that they didn't like those types of questions, which seems to me absolutely ridiculous. This is just this woke mentality of if you don't say exactly what I say, I need to shut you up. And that's very troublesome considering these are the oversight committees to significant and important professions. So that's, I think, something that really needs to be looked at, and I think maybe the government should step in and maybe empower themselves to certify these professions, instead of giving these oversight committees all the power to certify and choose punishments and stuff like that. I don't know if that's a great answer to this problem. I think it may be the only one right now, because it's apparently getting ridiculous in all of these professions where there's an oversight committee. So next, talking about paper straws. Scientists in Belgium released a study. It was published in the Journal of Food Additives and Contaminants. And what they did was they basically tested a whole bunch of brands of straws. And they tested a whole bunch of different types of straws too. So they tested straws made of paper, bamboo, plastic, glass, and stainless steel. And these straws are straws that are found in either shops, supermarkets, or restaurants across the country of Belgium. Most of those brands are the same brands we get here in North America as well. And most of these straws that were tested had concentration of PFASs. I'm going to put the name of that up here. I'm just going to butcher it if I try to say it. So most of the straws, a significant number of the straws, tested positive for those chemicals. Now, paper straws turns out to be the worst. Excuse me. I'm still waking up as I do this. Paper straws tended to be the worst. 90% of the brands tested positive for this chemical. They also found that 80% of bamboo straws tested positive, 75% of plastic straws tested positive, and 40% of glass straws tested positive. Of all the straws tested, the only ones that tested negative were the stainless steel straws. Now this chemical, why is it so worrisome? Well, this chemical is what we call a quote-unquote forever chemical, meaning it takes a very, very long time for it to break down in its environment, whether that be the human body or the natural environment. And they are problematic. They aren't problematic at low levels, however, they do stay within the body, if we're talking about a human being, and they build up over time, especially the more you're using things that have these chemicals in them. And at certain levels, they are toxic to human beings, and they've shown to have a bunch of negative health effects. And so they have been linked to things, they've been linked to negative reproductive effects, such as decreased fertility or increased high blood pressure in pregnant women. They've been linked to developmental effects or delays in children, including low birth weights, accelerated puberty, bone variations, and behavioral changes. They've been linked to increased risk of certain cancers, including prostate, kidney, and testicular cancer. They've been linked to reduced ability of the body's immune system to fight off infections, and they've also been linked to reduced vaccine response within the body. They've been linked to interference with the body's natural hormones, and they've also been linked to increased cholesterol levels and or the risk of obesity. So obviously that's not a great list of things. I'm sure as we study more of these symptoms from these chemicals will come out. So what should be done about this? Well, I think the best answer, in my mind at least, is to have, I mean, if you want to use these straws, obviously, I hope you're aware of this risk, and if you want to continue using them, I would stop. I'm going to be stopping using paper straws. Not that I use them much anyway. I was never a fan of them. I don't drink a lot of drinks other than like water and coffee, as I have here. And so I tended to be, there was definitely a taste when I drank water with them. So I generally don't use them for that reason, because I'm not going to drink coffee through a straw. So I barely use them to begin with, and even when I'm given one at a restaurant, I tend not to use it anyway. I think restaurants should stop using them altogether. It would save the restaurant a little bit of money if they didn't serve straws. I think it should be your responsibility. What I would suggest, if you're worried about these chemicals, buy a couple of the stainless steel straws. They're a little more expensive, but they do last basically forever. They're stainless steel. And just clean them and keep using them. And you know, if you're worried about drinking from a glass at a restaurant, bring your own stainless steel straw. I don't think the restaurant should have to serve them with straws, and I don't think it's a good idea to use them if they're serving them with paper straws, not with this chemical involved. I will point out that I was never a huge fan of this idea to begin with. I am very environmentally minded. I know that there's a big issue with plastic straws. I never thought that paper straws were the correct answer, because after thinking about it for about, after thinking about this whole issue for about 2 minutes, I realized, well, wait a second, if the paper straws need to be transported anywhere, how do you protect them from getting wet or damp or, and the answer is you wrap them in plastic. Okay, so how have we actually helped the environment if there's still that plastic in them, or still that plastic being used? The answer is we're really not. Also, another big thing is that these paper straws cannot be recycled, whereas most of the plastic, not all the plastic straws can be, but like I think it's something like 90% of them could. and so that is problematic as well. The other issue, these chemicals, as I've talked about, as the straw is decomposing, can leach out and enter the natural environment. So whether that's in a garbage dump or whether that's in the environment, if someone has littered and thrown their paper straw on the ground, and that can leach into the natural environment and cause havoc there too. So this is all very problematic. I will point out that this is not the first thing recently that we've seen where people have tried to make change for the better, to help save the environment or to help humanity or whatever the reason is, without, I believe, going through proper testing and proper, even just logical thinking when it comes to this. And as we've seen yet again, oh, look at that, the paper straws are really no better than the plastic ones, and actually I would argue that they're a little worse because of these chemicals. Now, that being said, a lot of the plastic ones had these chemicals too. However, it was less. Like I said, 75% of the brands for plastic had them as well, whereas 90% of the paper brands did. Let's just stop using straws. Why do we need straws? What, other than, I don't know. I can't think of a drink where you have to use a straw. Maybe a milkshake. Maybe have your stainless steel straws if you want to use them at restaurants, like I suggested earlier, and maybe if you're having milkshakes or, like, I don't know, thicker drinks. But, like, why do you need a straw otherwise? I don't see the point in using many straws these days. I do think if you're worried about these health effects, stop using these straws. It is a problem. Oh, it turns out this chemical is added. I should add this as well. It turns out this chemical is added in the process of making the straw. It's not like a chemical that stops the straw from breaking down or anything like this. It's just I forget. I believe, I may be wrong about this though, so take what I say about it with a grain of salt. But I believe it helps make the paper they're using easier to make the straws in some way. There wasn't a lot of information about that, and I read that off of a website that I would deem at best. So it may be for something else entirely, but it's problematic. Yeah. So paper straws out, metal straws in. Until we find something wrong with them, and you never know. I think in this day and age, with I do have a slightly cynical look at the world these days, where if you test something long enough, you're always going to find something wrong with it. Although this is a big one, I don't think this falls under that category, because this is a big issue that these chemicals are in these straws that we're using, especially because the body basically cannot break down these chemicals. Or if they do, it takes a lifetime to break them down, essentially. And if you are exposed to enough of these chemicals, they can have quite a hazardous effect on your health. So yeah, metal straws in for now, and we'll go from there. Like I said, personally, I don't see the need to use straws. But that leads me to my story. Oh boy. Okay. I don't know about you. Maybe you guys can let me know in the comments. Why does it feel like every time I make plans, they go to hell in a handbasket really quickly? And it's not like say it's plans with other people and everything lines up perfectly and you're so proud of these plans, and then like one little thing right at the beginning just goes, and then the next thing goes, and the next thing goes, and they're not things you can control, but they're things that work against your plan. Does anyone else seem to have that a lot? Like everything I plan these days, it seems like that is happening. And that's what happened when I was supposed to be looking after my grandfather. So basically what happened was my parents needed some time to deal with some stuff that they have to deal with. And so they needed me to look after my grandfather more for basically a 2-month span, essentially. So we made a plan of when I could go over, when I couldn't, that type of thing. We looked at all the dates, we looked at everything. We decided when, each day, what times I would be over for, and so on and so forth. And thought, hey, everything's great, it looks good on paper. We had a couple of contingencies just in case something went wrong. I'm glad we did. If we didn't, we would have been all in trouble. So I had about 3 or 4 days before I started, after we, finished making this plan, and I decided. I thought about it for about a day, and I decided, you know what? I do want to release some videos, so I'm gonna make a bunch of them all at once, and then I'm just gonna release them once a week. I'll explain what's going on, and just release them, and we'll see what happens. And that's exactly what I did. It took a day and a bit to film all the videos I needed, and I edited them and set them on YouTube to release. And then just basically I have not been on YouTube until now, or when I post this. So I don't know, I may have no subscribers, I may have it may be that no one watched any of those videos. I don't know, because I haven't even looked. Normally I kind of keep on top of that. I definitely haven't responded to comments. I will be doing that more so now. Although, just please be aware that I am still helping out with my grandfather. It's just slightly more limited in when I help out, so I do have a little bit of time to get back to this as well. But anyway, so going back to the story, the day that I'm supposed to go over and start helping my grandfather, my cat starts throwing up. Now, there are many reasons cats throw up. Some of it, they just eat too fast, or they eat too much. Some of it, they got into something that they weren't supposed to and their stomach couldn't handle it and they throw it up. So some of them are very not an issue, and others can be very, very worrisome. He threw up a couple times the first day, and it wasn't great. But he started getting sicker and sicker. Meaning that although I was supposed to be more looking after my grandfather, I also had to make sure my cat was okay every day. So I had to run back and forth to make sure everything was all right. Unfortunately, by the 3rd day, my cat stopped eating and drinking completely, which is, I wanted to give him a little bit of time to see if he would get better by himself. However, when a cat is throwing up and also not eating and drinking, that's the time to take him to the vet. I have a fantastic vet. I love my vet. I've had this vet since I got this cat, and they did everything they could to rule out any of the super bad things. It turns out my cat had a bit of a cat cold or a cat flu, very similar in symptoms to our colds and flus. It's just different viruses that give them that. And so he was sick for a little while. I had to give him anti-nausea medication. It took him about a week to get better, all told, which meant that my grandfather did not get as much attention as I was supposed to give him in that week, because again, I was running back and forth between the two. My parents were aware of this. They knew that this was happening. They knew I let them know this, so we were able to kind of, okay, well, don't worry about it. Once your cat gets better, we'll start in full. Sure, we will. My cat's better. Day 7 of my cat having this thing. He's meowing at food time and he eats the entire food all at once. He doesn't normally do that, but he was probably so hungry from not eating for the rest of the days that he was just like, oh my god, I'm starving. Give me my food. So that's a sign that he's a lot better. So I text them. I say, hey, my cat's doing good now. I can, look after my grandfather full time, sort of thing. And they're like, okay, well, we'll see you tomorrow. The very next day, when I'm supposed to be over there, I wake up with a wicked sore throat. Now, these days, it does not seem to matter what type of bug I've gotten. It always starts with a sore throat, whether it's a flu or a cold or even COVID. Whenever I've had any of them, they all start with a sore throat. My body has a very definite series of steps when I get sick. Sore throat, aching muscles, fatigue, and then whatever I get. So I had a bit of a head cold for about 2 days. It lasted for about 2 days. Obviously, I can't go over to see my grandfather. I don't want to get him sick. I could wear a mask. However, we wanted to be super, super careful. He's 95 years old. He has immune system issues. He's fighting leukemia at the moment. So we didn't want to expose him to anything. So I'm like, okay, well, this is only, I feel like I'm getting better after 2 days. So I won't have this for long. It'll be good. I'll take a couple days extra just to make sure I've completely got it out of my system, and then I'll go back and start looking after him again. Except that I can never just have a cold. My body doesn't just get colds. Afterwards, my body tends to get sinusitis or sinus infections. Now, in this case, I was lucky and I only got sinusitis and not a sinus infection. Usually, I would get a sinus infection with these things. I'm very prone to sinus infections for whatever reason. I always have been throughout my life. So I had sinusitis, which of course, just made things longer before I could help my grandfather. And on top of that, I developed bronchitis, which was just beautiful. I had there was really, unfortunately, nothing my doctor could do. It was all viral, and so I just had to wait it out. And that took about, all told, week and a half, almost 2 weeks. So that's 3 out of 8 weeks that I'm not helping my grandfather. Eventually, it all clears up, and my parents and I talked about it, and they're like, no, we want you to be, we're going to follow COVID guidelines. We want you to be at least 24 hours without symptoms before you come over. And fair enough, and it makes sense, and we're protecting my grandfather, and I'm good with that. And so that time came around. I was symptom-free. I called them. I let them know, hey, I'm coming over. I'm good to come over tomorrow. I get a text. Oh, excuse me. Still waking up. I get a text that night. Maybe 1 a.m. Hey, your grandfather has fallen. It looks like it's very bad. We'll keep you posted. To walk, my grandfather needs a walker. He needs the aid of a walker, and because he doesn't have any sort of balance without it. Also, his knees are not strong enough without the walker for him to walk. That being said, my grandfather is a stubborn gentleman who, to live to 95, you have to be stubborn, who decided that he didn't actually need his walker to go to the washroom at night. He took about 6 steps, he fell, and he broke his arm. Of course he did. So, one thing right after another. So he was in hospital all that night and all the next day. Basically, they wanted to make sure that his arm was his only issue. They took his blood. I'm not going to go into this right now, but apparently his blood is very interesting. Well, I'll say it. It's fine. The doctor said he wasn't sure that was my grandfather's blood when he tested it, because it's too good for a 95-year-old. Essentially, he could see the the signs of leukemia. He could see the signs of kidney failure that my grandfather has had for like 20 years now. Well, not kidney failure, but kidneys failing, because they're not in failure technically. But he said it was too good. Like, he said, this is the blood of at least someone who's a decade younger than 95, about 85. And so he's like, without the leukemia, I think your grandfather could have lived well into his hundreds. So that's interesting. I believe it, because like even his body now, it's starting to catch up to his age, and with the leukemia and everything else going on, it's starting to break down more so. But when he was 70, he looked like he was like 60. When he was 80, he looked like he was 70. When he was 90, he looked like he was 80. We'd take him out to restaurants when he was like 93. He had a favorite restaurant that he would like to go out. He'd like to go out to for breakfast. And one day I'm like to the waitress that been there forever, just absolutely loved my grandfather. They joked all the time when he was there, and she would, you know, help him as much as possible as the waitress went. She was like, I was like, just out of curiosity, how old do you think my grandfather is? And she looks at him and she's like, well, I don't want to insult him, but you know, maybe like 79, 80, something like that. And I'm like, what if I was to tell you he's 93? And she just looks at him and she's like, there's no fucking way. And then she she knew that she shouldn't say that. And she, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, it's okay, because that's the reaction we always get. So apparently he's still, his blood is still very good for his age, interestingly enough. But anyway, he's in a cast now. He actually needs more attention now than when he did when I was supposed to start helping him. I've been able to help since then. All told, that was about half of the time I was supposed to help look after him, basically shot to hell because of everything that happened. And now there's a lot more going on because he did break his arm. There are a lot of different inspections happening. Unfortunately, he had to go to the hospital a couple of years ago because he had a bad fall. Nothing as bad as this, but they basically told us then that if he had another fall, he would be forced into a nursing home. They have that right here in Canada to force you into a nursing home if you're a certain age and they feel like you can't look after yourself. And unfortunately, I feel like because he has shown repetitive behavior where he refuses to use his walker even though he needs it, the only way our house is deemed safe for him is if he uses his walker. So unfortunately, if he doesn't use his walker, our house is not safe for him. And I have a feeling, I think people in my family are in denial about this, but I very much have a feeling that we're going to get the order to that he has to be moved into a nursing home. I think unfortunately that's going to do a lot to do him in. He's a very formal British gentleman who was actually brought up by his grandmother. His grandmother was a Victorian, and well, the rule of thumb was you never put someone old into a nursing home. And I know it will just make him go crazy very quickly. So I hope it doesn't happen, but I have a feeling it will, unfortunately. That being said, even with my new series that I'm starting now, I am still going to be taking time to look after him. There are certain days where no one else can look after him, so I'm going to be going in and stepping up. Normally I should have time to film these videos. There may be slight interruptions in my next series, but I will get those videos out. And okay, next series, I want to do this quickly because I know I've been talking for a while already. My next series is going to be all about men and women, feminism, dating in today's times, and a bunch of stuff about men versus women, that type of thing. I'm going to be very critical about everyone. I see a lot of people that get up and say, well, it's all women's fault, or oh, it's all men's fault. No, I think there's fault on both sides, and I'm going to be looking at that. It's going to be a limited series. I'm going to come back to it later on. After I do a couple other series. My plan is to release 9 videos total in this series, so 2 a week. The first video will be the Friday of the same week that this video comes out, and I will see you in those. It should be fun. I have a feeling I'm just going to piss everyone off, so it should be a fun series. Until then, I'll see you. Bye-bye.